Hey, welcome back to Well, That's Interesting, the okay, I believe you, but please explain edition. Today is episode 236, How Growing Weed with Bat Poop Led to 2 Deaths, and yeah, you could use a tooth to restore sight in a blind patient. My friends, today is one of those days where you hear the title of the show and you say to yourself, I know each of those words, but strung together it doesn't make any sense. Well, I have great news. All will be explained, and those explanations will be so chock full of bonkers details that when they're strung together, it makes the title of the show seem completely normal. In the first half of the show, we are going to meander through a medical report that highlights not one, but 2 fatal cases that affected men in the state of New York just last year. A 59-year-old patient we're going to call patient 1, and a 64-year-old patient who we're going to call patient 2. Both men resided in Rochester, both men shared a love of cannabis, both men grew the plant for their own use, and both men shared an unfortunate fate caused by the same rare fungal infection. But get this, although they had quite a bit in common, they didn't know one another. This is a bizarre tale of coincidence and consequence, and we will get into each of their stories. We will go through the roll call of brutal symptoms and pre-existing conditions. We will find out how in the holy hell these guys from New York got their hands on bat poop and why. We will talk about what was in that bat poop and how it ended up in their bodies. We'll also talk about how bat poop is a wonderful resource, but, and big but here, you really need to know what you're doing because shit happens. Then after the break, this medical procedure may also sound a bit crazy, but it's so crazy, it works. I'm talking about osteoodontokeratoprothesis. I nailed it, and it's a fucking mouthful that translates to tooth and eye surgery. Now, if you're a long-time listener of the show, or even a relatively new listener, then you know we have been up to our eyeballs in eyeballs lately. For example, at the end of January, we reached the incredibly curvy, drop-dead gorgeous episode number of 222, and to celebrate, we talked about how you could fit a dozen larvae in one man's eye, and a symptom called corneal melt, which is as awful as it sounds. If you haven't had a listen, please do. Because in that episode, not only did the rest of the flock and I trauma bond after looking at corresponding photos, we also learned about our precious, precious corneas. Like what they do, and that they can detach. And I still hate that fact. Let's avoid the detachment part and have ourselves a refresher on what the cornea does exactly. So everyone, please, look at a reflective surface, and after blowing yourself a kiss, take a look at the clear, dome-shaped outer layer of your eyes. Try not to get lost in their beauty and focus. We are looking at the very outer layer. First, the cornea acts as a shield, protecting the inner structures of the eye from damage caused by dust, debris, bacteria, and fucking UV radiation. And second, this clear part allows light to pass through it without obstruction, and its curvature helps to bend and focus light into the retina located way in the back of your eye. In sum, of the many players that step up to the plate to help you see the world, this one is first at bat. And I think that was a great analogy for someone who isn't into sports ball, and I'm proud of myself. Anyway, thousands of people, including Gail Lane of Vancouver, Canada, suffer from severe scarring on their eyes caused by some type of trauma. And this basically transformed their once transparent cornea into a brick wall. My friends, we will meet Gail and learn how she lost her eyesight at age 64. We will meet the doctor who, after successfully performing tooth and eye surgery, where else but his equally wild home of Australia, heard of Gail's case and said, you know what'll help them, mate, is a tooth. We will get into the process and how in the fuck this surgery restores vision. It's amazing. In the meantime, hi, I'm Jill Chacha, and if this is your first time listening, welcome to the flock, my sharp business goose. To begin, we're going to take a minute out of our busy day, and I'm going to ask you all to gather around an imaginary fireplace because I need to tell a tale. Now, this tale is actually several thousand years long. It contains more characters than a Telemundo telenovela and hundreds of times more drama. It is a literal story about life and death, betrayal and greed. It contains the worst of humanity, which eventually leads to innovation to avoid it, but that too eventually leads to even more destruction. My friends, I'm talking about batshit. If you're surprised, well, so was I. I had no idea how long, contentious, and wild the story of guano was until I heard about two gentlemen who wanted to grow weed by using it as a fertilizer, and I, being too curious for my own friggin' good, said, I wonder what's up with batshit. I should look it up. And thus fell into a 60-foot deep pile of the stuff. And yeah, by the way, piles of batshit can reach 60 feet deep, as recorded at the infamous Bracken Cave in Texas. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. What I'm about to tell you is ferociously reduced for time and cherry-picked for importance. I am begging. I'm literally begging the good people over at the BBC to make an 8 or 10-part series out of batshit. And I am serious, because its full history is brown gold. Anyway, let's begin by talking about the word guano, which happens to originate from the Andes Mountains and the indigenous language of Quechua, where it refers to any form of dung being used as an agricultural fertilizer. The people of that area, what is now Peru, collected seabird guano from small islands and points off the desert coast for the past 5,000 years. 5,000 years! Poop was so damn important to the survival of civilizations here that rulers of the Inca Empire restricted access to it and punished any disturbance of these birds under penalty of death. So, how do we know this? Colonizers. When the Spanish arrived, they certainly took notes, and some of those notes included how to use guano properly, and they took notes because they took the stuff for 300 years, from 1548 to 1800. But good news, that's when it got worse. Thanks to advancements in fields like chemistry and the mechanization of manual processes during the Industrial Revolution, from 1802 to 1884, what's called the Guano Age took place. I shit you not. According to Ye Olde Wiki, quote, chemist Humphrey Davy delivered a series of lectures which he compiled into an 1813 best-selling book about the role of nitrogenous manure as a fertilizer. The book was called Elements of Agricultural Chemistry. It highlighted the special effectiveness of Peruvian guano, noting that it made the sterile plains of Peru just fruitful. The book was translated into German, Italian, and French. American historian Wyndham, you know the one, the Wyndham D. Miles, said that it was likely, quote, the most popular book ever written on the subject. No other work on agricultural chemistry was read by as many English-speaking farmers, end quote. My friends, bird and batshit became a commodity whose effects were considered so powerful it was practically supernatural. Capitalists from around the world scrambled to find the most effective way to get their hands on it. And as you can imagine, they used everything but their own hands to do so. They turned commercial whaling ships on the Pacific coast of South America into a horrendous twofer by using those vessels to transport guano as well as blubber. Let's take a moment to imagine the smell. Speaking of death, I'm going to need you to sit the fuck down for this one. And please feel free to file it under holy fuck, I didn't see that coming, and clearly no one else did either. Are you sitting? Look, I don't care if you're crossing the street right now. Sit in the middle of the road and have everyone join in because they too need to hear this. Okay, are you ready? Well, that there guano export from Peru to Europe might be how the viral strain that decimated Ireland's potatoes during the Great Famine arrived. Quote, botanical sleuths named a new suspect this week in the blight that wiped out the Irish potato crop, starved 1 million people, and drove 2 million others to North America between 1845 and 1852. DNA tests of a leaf saved from that period excluded a Mexican strain of blight as a suspect and suggested another that originated in the Andean highlands and traveled to Ireland in Peruvian bat guano imported for fertilizer. End quote from Jim Dwyer of the New York Times. I can't even say it because it's so shocking. I want you to sit with that absolute clusterfuckery and put a pin in bad fertilizer. We will get back to it. But yeah, it's looking like batshit from Peru led to one of the most horrendous times in Ireland's history. Now, because I think we need it, some positive things also took place. The Peruvian government knew the value of this stuff, and for example, they were able to collect royalties on its sale, becoming the country's largest source of revenue. Some of that income was used by the state to free more than 25,000 black slaves and to abolish the head tax on its indigenous citizens. And yeah, I could hear you clapping. That deserves a round of applause. Until you realize someone has to do the literal shitty work of harvesting. I'm sorry to tell you this, but I have to tell you this. In the 1840s and 1850s, thousands of men were kidnapped or misled into thinking they were heading to California's gold mines. These men were from the Pacific Islands and southern China, and their numbers were so great. By 1852, Chinese laborers comprised of over 60% of Peru's guano miners. The rest were convicts, forced laborers paying off debts, or men from the Pacific Islands who were mostly native Hawaiians who could not read English. And boy howdy, wouldn't you know it, the contracts that they received in their own language, if they were offered one, lacked key amendments that the English version had, so they didn't match. Quote, the Hawaiian language contract was often missing key information, such as the departure date, the length of the contract, the name of the company for which they would be working. When they arrived at their destination to begin mining, they learned that both contracts were then largely meaningless in terms of work conditions. End quote. Yeah, I told you, this sucked. And it didn't just suck for people. Capitalism's effects are species blind. According to a September 2013 publication by IUCN, Peru's Guano Islands experienced severe ecological effects as a result of unsustainable mining. In the late 1800s, approximately 53 million seabirds lived on the 22 islands, but as of 2011, only 4.2 million live there. Bat guano is a whole other can of worms. Their shit literally fuels entire universes. Cave ecosystems are wholly dependent on bats to provide nutrients via their poop to support bacteria, fungi, and a ton of other species, including mites, beetles, isopods, and flies, who are then consumed by predators like spiders and scorpions, who are they themselves are eaten by amphibians, for example. Between the human and environmental cost, this is a goddamn mess. Leave it to German chemists to make it more efficient. In 1910, Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch performed some clickety-clack calculations to create the aptly named Haber-Bosch process, which, long story short, combines nitrogen from the motherfucking air with hydrogen derived from natural gas, like methane, into ammonia. This discovery meant two things. One, if we can extract nitrogen from the motherfucking air, we don't need guano. And two, we can make like so many bombs now because the synthetic ammonia from the process can be used for the production of nitric acid, a precursor to the nitrates used in explosives. World War I began 4 years later. Yay, everybody, yay. Okay, now, I know you're thinking, Jesus Christ, Jill. I only wanted to hear a story about weed. What is wrong with you? And what's in bat poop that makes it so special anyway? Well, I can help you with the second question, and I'm so glad you asked. The poop of insectivorous bats consists of fine particles of insect exoskeleton, because these cute fuzzy bastards can't digest it. That means it's full of chitin, aka polymer chains, chock full of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. As reported by batcon.org, nitrogen, abbreviated to N, promotes the growth of green stems and leaves, while phosphorus, P, supports roots, and potassium K helps with producing flowers and fruit. As such, your ratio of N to P to K can greatly affect your plant. According to the one and only CannabisBusinessTimes.com, quote, some brands of bat guano will offer a powdered product that contains a value of 8 to 1 to 1 or 7 to 3 to 1 that are most suitable for the vegetative state. Other brands will focus on a product that is more dominant in phosphorus, such as 0 to 10 to 0 and 0 to 12 to 0. These are better suited for the flowering phase, end quote. With that, join me, will you, at Strong Memorial Hospital in Rochester, New York, a wee 6-hour drive north from my hometown of New York City. It was here its medical staff, including doctors from the University of Rochester, had one hell of a 2024. Let's begin with patient 1, a 59-year-old man who identified as a heavy smoker with emphysema, a chronic lung disease that causes permanent damage to the air sacs in the lungs. Already up Schitt's Creek, he entered the emergency room exhibiting not only signs of respiratory failure, aka when the lungs can't adequately exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide, leading to low oxygen levels, but a sore throat, difficulty swallowing, and extensive weight loss over the past 6 weeks. On his intake form, the man was completely transparent, having said he used bat guano purchased on the internets to fertilize cannabis that he was cultivating and smoking. With this detail, the medical staff knew what direction to take, ordering CT scans, blood and urine tests to confirm if their suspicions were right. Results of the patient's neck scans came first, revealing he had mucus clogging his upper voice box and the right side of his vocal cord. Scans of his chest showed that he had a buildup of fluid there as well. My friends, this guy was walking around with a severe case of pneumonia. And if that doesn't sound great, wait until you hear about the blood tests. While waiting for those results, the hospital briefly put him on ventilation to support his breathing because of the emphysema, pneumonia, and sore throat and all of that, and I reckon it was a good idea he was lying down. The test showed signs of bacterial blood poisoning, which was further confirmed by identifying traces of fungi in the patient's urine and in coughed-up mucus samples in his respiratory tract. So he had a fungus inside him, head to toe. And he wasn't alone. A 64-year-old man, fellow cannabis lover and tobacco smoker, also arrived at the same emergency room presenting with nearly identical issues. He had a chronic cough and lost 35 pounds over a short time. On his intake form, he too mentioned poop. But this time, it came from a very local source. He reported having a severe bat infestation in his attic, and it left behind a thick layer of guano. Being oh so resourceful, he thought he could use it to fertilize his cannabis plants. As such, another round of CT scans, blood and urine tests were ordered up, and the results threw down some unpleasant stuff, like multiple lesions in his chest and pancreas, and traces of fungi were detected in his urine. Now, 99% of the time on this show, when strolling down old medical oddities lane, patients endure some of the worst of the worst, but they survive. But today is that 1%, and like all things 1%, it totally blows. Patient 1 was treated with 2 weeks' worth of antifungal medications, but his breathing problems continued and worsened. He was ultimately moved to comfort care where he died. Patient 2 was also given antifungal medications and was treated for those lesions. But here, 2 weeks into the therapy, there were signs of progress. The lesions were shrinking, and it looked as though he had a chance. Things were so positive, he was discharged. A month later, he returned with practically the same symptoms. And this time, he didn't bounce back. So, what in the holy fuck was in that bat poop? Histoplasma capsulatum. No, I didn't summon a demon, but it's pretty close to that. This is a fungus that lives in the soil of many parts of the world, including the United States, Africa, South and Central America. And as you probably guessed, it's most commonly found in and grows where there are bird and bat droppings in the soil. When that fungus is disturbed and shaken up, its spores become airborne. When inhaled, they enter your white blood cells and change from a mold into its infectious form as a yeast. At that point, you'd be diagnosed with hyptoplasmosis, just like these guys. Now, it turns out, according to clevelandclinic.org, most people with completely fine immune systems who are exposed to this fungus don't develop any symptoms. But for those compromised, like patient 1 and 2, it can overwhelm an already struggling immune system and cause mild or severe flu-like symptoms and breathing problems, which it did. And it went further, which it can. This fungus uses immune cells like a fucking Uber, spreading to other parts of the body, and this can cause life-threatening complications. So now that bat guano is readily available on the internets, Dr. Paulina Sudnik, an infectious disease fellow at the University of Rochester Medical Center and one of the authors of the report, has some advice, like handling it in a well-ventilated space while wearing a mask and gloves, or just not at all. But as we've seen, it's hard to quit shit, especially this shit, and capitalism is going to capitalize. It's being sold, and as such, there are guidelines to help prevent the worst. According to an article on the website for the University of Washington's horticulture-focused Elizabeth C. Miller Library, quote, bat guano must be decomposed and dried according to the USDA organic regulations requirements for raw manure. Those interested in purchasing commercial guano fertilizer can contact the manufacturer of the products and ask them about where they obtain their bat guano and whether they meet NOP, National Organic Program, and OMRI, Organic Material Review Institute standards, end quote. Well, I kind of like not touching it at all. I like that option, especially if it's in your goddamn attic. Don't. Go to plan B. After the break, some absolutely lovely and wonderful news because it's fucking time. A truly bizarre procedure that helps restore sight to some blind patients. This is the story we all need. Next. Stay tuned.
Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
They make the sound by vigorously rubbing their penis on their abdomen.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Then at night, they come out and crawl around your face and mate with each other.
Oh.
But
Victoria,
get this.
I would like to sleep tonight. As naturalists, let's face it, we find something dead, we go and we poke it with a stick. I did that with the deer like 3 weeks ago.
As you do. Rachel, no. You weren't paying attention. Blood and mucus.
Oh, right. Sorry.
All right, this episode is going off the rails.
This is the quality content people come here for. Strange by Nature is an award-winning science-based podcast where we have a lot of fun. We hope you'll stop on by and find us wherever you get your podcast.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
And we're back. We are so back. And my friends, how does tea and a chat with a sweet grandma sound? Great. Let's meet her. Please join me, will you, back in February of 2024 at Vancouver's Mount St. Joseph Hospital, where Gail Lane, age 74, is about to undergo the first of 2 surgeries to restore vision in her left eye. After losing it a decade ago at the age of 64, Gail has bemoaned the additional loss of her friends' faces and seeing blooming flowers. It was completely by chance. A severe reaction to prescription drugs left her with Stevens-Johnson syndrome, a rare disorder of the skin that led to scarring on her eye. Despite those losses, Gail did find love in her second act. For the last 8 years, Gail has been with Phil, even though, quote, I've never seen Phil. And I have friends who are more newly acquainted who I've never seen, she told Laurie Colbert of the Vancouver Sun. Gail is in a unique position. Her left eye, overall, is remarkably healthy. It's the cornea, the transparent dome-shaped front layer of the eye that covers the iris and pupil, that's been damaged. And thanks to episode 222, we damn well know that corneas can be removed one way or another. But if, in this instance, its removal is from surgery and not corneal melt, the goal would be to replace it, and to replace it with something that the body wouldn't reject, and allow light to enter the retina at the back of the eye. Or in other words, quote, it's like replacing the windshield on a car when it's totally frosted over. Providence Health ophthalmologist Dr. Greg Maloney mentioned to Laurie of the Vancouver Sun. My visually stunning business goose, Gail qualifies for this windshield swapperoo, and boy howdy, just wait until you hear how this swapperoo is gonna unfold. Okay, here we go. Osteoodontokeratoprosthesis, also known as tooth and eye surgery, begins here at Vancouver's Mount St. Joseph Hospital, where oral surgeon Dr. Ben Kang will begin step 1 of this remarkable eye surgery by removing a tooth and a smidge of jaw. For Gail, a canine will do. It will be buffed into a rectangular shape, whereupon a hole will be drilled in the middle of it. And inside that hole, I'd like you to fit a plastic optical lens. Thank you. Now, let's put this to the side for a moment, because while we're here, in Gail's mouth, yes, we need to do a few more things. One, we're going to need to cut a similarly sized amount of cheek skin, take it out. And 2, that tooth lens combo that we just made, we need to sew it back into Gail's cheek. And I know what you're thinking. Other than, dear God, why? Actually, no, that's it. I think you're just thinking, dear God, why? And that's a great question, because my friends, get this. That flap of skin that we just removed from Gail's cheek will act as the new flexible cornea. And it goes straight away onto her eye, under the eyelid. That's where it's going. Quote, we lay it over the whole eyeball to try to let it take root. And then it turns quickly into this pink, healthy, happy substance, Dr. Maloney said in that interview with the Vancouver Sun. And I have to say, he has a way with words. Happy substance. But yeah, if you're wondering what it looks like, just imagine the whites of someone's eye. But with this procedure, now you're going to see pink. As for that refurbished tooth, it's squirreled away in Gail's mouth for 3 months to allow a layer of tissue to form around it. This ingeniously wacky as fuck combination practically guarantees that Gail's body won't reject this replacement because they're from her own body. So please put a pin in this, and then pick up your phone. Head on over to the old social media stuffs and tap on today's post. You're going to see a handy-dandy illustrated step-by-step process of where we go from here. And yeah, you're going to want to buckle up. 3 months have passed, and Gail's cheeky eye has healed marvelously. It's now time to harvest that tooth. My friends, please check out steps 4 and 5. At this point, Dr. Maloney slides in to slide in the tooth lens thing under the new cornea, which is given a matching hole. They kind of line up. And this combo essentially forms a stable porthole for light to get through. This process takes about 6 hours, and if all goes well, vision comes back within a month. And for Gail, it totally did. Gail became the first Canadian to undergo tooth and eye surgery, making history and opening the door for others in North America. Now, this is a feel-good story. Granted, with a little queasiness, not gonna lie. But it probably leaves you with a few other questions like, who the fuck thought of this? And does it really work? This is wild. And does it work for the long term? Well, again, I am so glad you asked. As reported by Holly Large for IFL Science, tooth and eye surgery is far from new. It's been around since the 1960s when it was pioneered by Italian ophthalmologist Professor Benedetto Strambelli. Marron ami. So yes, this type of surgery began in the drug-fueled 60s, and needless to say, it's been refined since. Now, when I say refined, I really mean it. Check out the statistics on this process. Quote, according to the Vancouver Sun, when researchers analyzed the outcomes of 59 patients who had a total of 82 eyes undergo this procedure between 1969 and 2011, they found the tooth was still in place in 94% of the eyes, and that 50% of those eyes had vision good enough for legal driving or better. Since Gail's surgery, Dr. Maloney received referrals of additional patients from Alberta, Manitoba, and Ontario. Even though he believes Canada will host maybe 2 or 3 surgeries a year, given the rareness of this kind of blindness, that's 2 or 3 people a year whose lives are going to change for the better. And that's awesome. They just need to spare a tooth or 2. And then have the thing in their mouth. Anyway, thank you for listening, rating, subscribing, telling your friends about batshit. I think that's where we get the term batshit crazy. I cannot, it leads to the potato famine. Tell them about, then quickly follow up with the tooth and eye surgery. It's going to be a great, great day for your friend. And a mouthy thanks to the folks over at Airwave Media, the podcast network to which WTI belongs. If you love this show, and you do, you'll love the other podcasts in this family. And please, stay interesting.